Okay. Can you all hear me? I don't like hiding behind the lectern. I'd rather actually talk to you. So if you can't hear me, I may have to retreat, but if you can, hopefully it all works for you. Okay, so basically, I have to tell you about Amey, because unless you understand and feel what our workforce are, you're going to miss the whole point of this presentation. So interestingly, I know that we start these presentations by saying this is what we do, but actually you've got to get a feeling for our workforce. Otherwise, go and have another cup of coffee. And what we do is we do what we call infrastructure services. We maintain things, and we maintain all sorts of different things. We maintain, our new levels of business are we're now looking to maintain people. Highly risky, new areas of business. But the old areas of business are we maintain roads, railways, utilities. And somebody sort of said, how do you describe Amey? And they spent ages and ages and ages trying to do this. And at the end of the day, all they could do is draw a picture. And I don't know if you can see some of the stuff, but all those different services and highways they put up there. When they first drew that picture, they suddenly realized they'd lost about 50% of the services because a lot of our services happen underground. So they had to extend that picture and put it underground. Now, just to give you a quick feeling for how this works, I had a colleague who, his father died recently, and he went to the funeral. And he was at the funeral service, and Amey was at the funeral service, which is slightly uncomfortable because, it's a time of bereavement. He was wondering, why is work here? The funeral service finished, and Amey was still there, and he was beginning to feel very uncomfortable that everybody else was leaving, and work was still there, shadowing him. The reason why Amey was there is they were digging the grave. So, interesting sort of feeling of the services we do. We reckon we touch, and I get this, sorry, we've just heard about a marketing things, and this is a bit of marketing spiel, but we reckon we touch 50% of the UK's population in some way or another every day. Whether you're driving down one of the highways we're maintaining, you're on a piece of rail network we're maintaining, you're in one of the buildings we're maintaining, and then there are a whole lot of other services that you won't want to touch, that none of you are ever likely to touch, but we are beginning to do a lot of our escorting of scallywags between courts and prisons and whatever. So it's not one you want to get close to. So this is Amey. If you think about it as maintaining infrastructure, and you get the sense of what we do. Now, to do that, we do a lot of stuff. We have a lot of people. We have a lot of blue-collar workforce people, and this is the point of the presentation. What is the impact on our type of blue-collar workforce in the next 10, 15, 20 years? Okay, so I've talked about the blue-collar. I now want to talk about the smart machine. Look at this date. This is 1966. This was basically deep blue, and it was the first computer to actually beat Kasparov, the world chess champion. And it was astounding. A lot of people thought it could not be done. It was, remember that he actually played the thing. And anyway, that's quite a long time ago. That's 20 years ago. By the way, since then, computers now will always beat the chess champions. The way this works basically is the chessboard basically still, even though it's incredibly complex, it has a finite set of moves, and it can compute those to the nth degree, and therefore it can do it far better than a human, once the rules are. Unfortunately, life is not like that, because the beauty of this is finite. You've got finite probabilities. So this is not what I mean by a smart machine. It's certainly an evolutionary breakthrough in terms of our computing, but it's not what I mean by a smart machine. I'm much, much more interested in these two. If you haven't seen these two, these are the next two big breakthroughs, and you should be very much more aware of them. The first was IBM Watson's, which then was a natural text processing language. They challenged, again, we talked about cultural history, and you must have a look at this after this chat on YouTube if you haven't seen this. But they challenged the two best game players in the States. These guys had won millions and millions and millions of dollars by playing game shows called Jeopardy. And anyway, IBM challenged them again a little while away now. For me, it seemed like actually sooner, but a little while to basically pay a computer to play a game show and basically just receive natural processing things. So whatever was spoken, they typed in and the computer had to answer. Again, no one thought that actual natural language processing had got to this stage, the amount of processing that information and actually doing what they did. It works on basic probabilities. So it gets down and then probabilized down to an answer and then shouts out an answer. Anyway, it won. It won, and we're beginning to see this is the one to watch. One for the industry wants to watch is IBM last year bought the Weather Channel. Quite an amazing thing for a big company to be buying a weather channel. So watch this space. Smart machines, weather channels, they obviously believe that they can put significant computing smart machines into processing weather. Because the weather channel has about 300 to 400 meteorologists. You wouldn't be doing that unless you thought you could bring some natural change. Anyway, the most topical one, and I've got to mention it, is I hope you've all been watching DeepMind. This one is fantastically different from Deep Blue because the actual guys tell us there are more permutations in this funny bloody game called Go than atoms in a universe. There are more permutations than that, you know? So it is completely different to the chess game we saw earlier, which is staggering. Now, this one again, this one is interesting because the way it works is not like the chess program where you basically program. It sets it up by actually playing itself, as you can see. Well, they've played itself millions of times. It just plays itself, almost like a child. So it starts and plays and plays and plays, and by playing itself, it gets better and better and better and better. As I might have done when I started playing chess as a child. I might have, played with my father, and we played a bit more, and I learned the mistakes. But this thing does it at a phenomenal speed that we can never do. So that's a whole new breakthrough in the type of computing power we're seeing emerging into our things. This one is basically at its forefront of demonstrating. Watson basically now has commercial applications. So if you do a bit more research in it, it's got commercial applications. I think I might be wrong that, but one of the investment companies have bought it for looking at some of their research. And basically a lot of health companies are looking at Watson. Good, I'm getting some nods here, so there's actually some good, you have read this. So certainly IBM is basically almost set up an IBM health sector because they believe that actually the health model cannot be sustained on the current parameters that we're working at the moment.
They're also trying to set up call center operators.
Thank you. So that one you can see is becoming commercialized. This one is interesting. Now, just quickly, before I move this one, Stephen Hawking basically said a couple of years ago about rise of machines. And the rise, he said these machines are so good is not because they think, but the reason they can do this playing itself so quickly, so repetitively, and learn so quickly. Our human brain doesn't work like that. It works on an evolutionary principle. It doesn't work on manage this. However, Lee Sedol won the fourth game. He lost the first three hands down, and he won the fourth game, which was, thank goodness he did. But there's a real important point of the fourth game, I must move on, is that he played a move that when they analyzed that move, the computer would never have ever thought about it in a million years. It was so ingenious and so brilliant that it led to him thinking. The terrible thing for Lee Sedol is once the computers learnt about it, it had never seen that move in the millions of times that it played itself. Unfortunately, it did see it a couple of days ago. Okay, there's a little hint here, which I'm getting to here. Even with all this complexity, and if you know the level of Go, and they can't get the computer to move the pieces. Now that tells you something. There's still a human being having to move the pieces, and sure enough, that's fascinating.